slogan for our college is ready to work and ready to lead. And we really mean it. We work on leadership is our attempt to make sure that not only do we teach our students the textbook principles and theories, but we also bring the expertise of business executives to both our faculty and our students.
That's two.
I should hide this. I'm up to it.
All right, I can talk loud. Hi, everybody, and I don't have anything to say except welcome and to tell you that the College of Communications is very pleased to cooperate with the Mahalo College of Business and Economics in putting on this program today. We share a lot of students back and forth across the street between the two colleges, and I really believe that the interaction of colleges working together strengthens our individual programs and makes it a greater university. I appreciate all of you coming today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program, and thanks for having us.
A little bit about UPS. I spent a 35-year career there. Today, the things you heard are true. A great organization. We have about 120,000 employees, and if you cut us, everybody bleeds. The same thing. We talk about pursuit of excellence, attention to detail, and a sense of urgency. But the umbrella that covers it all is what you heard this morning: an absolute commitment to integrity, because we do want people to come and spend a career at UPS, and everybody that makes it to the top of UPS starts at the very bottom, where I did, right here in Costa Mesa, unloading trucks. But we got so many people from other organizations that came to us because they worked for organizations where they were working their way up the path, had great careers, all the things you heard today, and then someone above them slipped on an integrity basis, whether it's Enron or whatever you want to call it. And not only did their careers come tumbling down, but their own personal careers. So we found it's most essential to tell everybody from the very beginning. As I started out unloading trucks, they said, look, you're going to school, we know you're intelligent, we know all about that, and if you don't get something, I'll work with you no matter how long it takes to do it, but if you ever lie, cheat, or steal, you're gone the next day. And so we've always had that emphasis on integrity.
Imagine Jonathan. Jonathan's a sophomore at Cal State Fullerton. He gets up, he has his latte, and he thinks the world needs to know about this, so he takes a picture of it. He takes a picture of his latte, and then he sends it out on his Twitter feed, and then there's Sarah who says, "You had a latte too?" And she retweets his latte to her 499 followers. And then he checks his Facebook account to see kind of what events and updates are going on. Then he hops on his MySpace. Then he gets on his LinkedIn just to pretend like he's somewhat of a professional. And then he thinks about his class schedule. And then he turns on his iPod, which is connected to his iPhone, which is connected to his email, which is connected to his Twitter and his Facebook to show off what he's going to have for lunch that day. So it's going to be a real exciting day for Jonathan. Well, we know as we look at the growth of technology within our world, you see two factors really taking place within technology. You see this massive explosion of the mediaization of our world, that everything that you can do, you are a personal product that you can now show off to the world, which is a lot of responsibility for people in this generation. They feel an impulse to share their deepest moments, their feelings, their status updates, what they're doing with the world of onlooking followers, some that they know and some that they do not know. But the bad part about that is that they have a form of media saturation that they don't know how to get out of. Meaning, the average millennial, and this is a crazy statistic, when you combine the combination of multimedia uses, spends about 10 to 12 hours a day using some form of online, digital, or video media.
The lesson of short-term versus long-term gain. What is the critical skill in being an agent of trust in a distrustful world? What is the critical skill? The whole fulcrum of ethical life rests on a story of short-term versus long-term benefit. All ethical issues play themselves out on how we perceive short and long-term gain. If you want to simplify the story of what you want to understand about ethical inquiry at this most fundamental level, it's that lesson. And therefore, you need to understand what does it mean to gain long-term trust in a relational-driven world that you are creating. Long-term trust is the goal. To sustain individuals and organizations, to sustain families, communities, businesses. You don't create long-term gain without trust. There's a tremendous amount of trust research that's been done right here in Orange County by the DGWB Values Institute. It's doing work with the business school here and will continue to do so.
Our company is all about creating innovative technologies, right? And so if you want to come someplace where you get to work on some really cool stuff, this is a cool place to be. And there's some brilliant engineers that I just can't believe what they've developed. I mean, no longer to have your chest cut open and be able to get a heart valve replaced through a catheter. Unbelievable, right? And so there's also, we take it beyond R&D, right? To say that we want to, everything that we do should be innovative is really important to us, right? So just to have a culture that's innovative. It's the one thing that I worry about the most as we get bigger. So we're going from a $1 billion company to probably a $3 billion company here in the next 3 or 4 years. And I worry that we're going to become one of those big companies like Medtronic or Boston Scientific or St. Jude or all these competitors that we deal with every day. We're small and we're nimble and we're flexible, we're agile, and I worry about that. I worry about hierarchy, more rules, more policies. I mean, a team of my folks just recently came back and said, we should make everybody in the company have a PMO on development. And I said, wow, so you want to have a rule. It's just, everybody slips into this. As you get bigger, it's easier to influence through rules, through policies, and I'm trying to get people to not do that. So that's one thing. This humanity piece is big for us, right? I mean, so you come to Edwards because you care. We care, right? We care about how we can provide clinicians with the right technology so that they can influence the saving of someone's life, right? And we care about that, right? If you don't, like, I didn't realize that until I got here. When I used to work at Arthur Andersen, I go, wow, I work for the #1 accounting firm. It doesn't exist anymore. But that when you say that to a neighbor, it was like, wow, you work at Arthur Andersen, right? But at the end of the day, we had an audit, a tax, or some kind of system, right? At Edwards, at the end of the day, you have a life saving, and it's different. And so you drink that Kool-Aid, and you come in, and you do feel like, the credo, helping patients is our life's work, and life is now. You feel a sense of urgency. We got to get this going. We got to get this technology out in a quality way to save these people's life because they're dying every day. People 80 plus couldn't have their chest cut open lots of times, right? So within 2 years of being diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, they die. Well, we're making a difference on that, right? And that's what's cool. So if you don't feel like you get to go to work and you feel like you got to go to work, I tell people, go work someplace else because that's not allowed at Edwards.
Succession practices. So a lot of what Rob was saying made me want to now kind of piggyback on what you were sharing about what do you do with that critical talent pipeline and how do you ensure that that pipeline in that bench strength is ready? Have you assessed them? Have you identified them properly? And then how do you prepare them for those future roles? And is it across the globe? How are you doing that?
I'll go ahead and start, Lori. Succession planning we take very, very seriously at our organization. It's a formal annual process, and I started saying before that the 2 most important things in our worst year that I'm the proudest of is doing our engagement survey, and also literally the first year we rolled out succession planning was right in the middle of that downturn. So we had executives that in the morning were laying off some of their people, which stinks, but what is that? That's a short-term thing you have to do. And then 3 hours later, my staff has them in the room saying, where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? People's heads were spinning. Like, what are you doing? I just had to let 3 people go. Sorry, we want to know if you want to be here. Should we continue to invest in you? Because we know we're going to come back. It's whether or not you want to be here with us and do we want to continue to go down that path. So process for us launched about 3 years ago, shortly after I arrived. We use a top-down, bottom-up approach that, thanks to Lori, we were written up in Harvard Business Review for best practice. And it was really all about the fact that it's not just what the leader thinks of the talent and what their capabilities are, but then you have to actually talk to the person and find out what they really want. And are they willing to do things like sacrifice on behalf of moving their career up? Like, what is important to them? How aspirational are they? Do they want their boss's job and all the trauma that comes along with that? So do a top-down, bottoms-up approach, check in. It's an annual formal process, but check in quarterly. What's unique about our organization is that we don't have a product. We are a staffing agency, so all we have is our people. So we have to continue to invest on an ongoing nature in our people, and we are trying and getting better, I think, kind of year over year at truly building a culture that embraces development.
So we compete for the same talent. Now the interesting thing is, right, anybody know the unemployment rate of college graduates in the United States? It's under 4%, right? Under 4%. For the folks that we're generally looking for, the unemployment rate is actually below the natural rate of unemployment, right? So what we have to do actually is find some way to create greater supply because we know we're creating greater demand, right? So that is a different challenge that we face, and because the Orange County community is as small as it is, it would be detrimental to the business community in Orange County if we actually competed against each other as opposed to try to create a bigger market, right? So Allergan and an EVP, we've done all those things that I mentioned. Our focus is that way. We want to be the anti-big pharma company in many ways, and so we attract folks who want to be in an organization that is not bureaucratic, that is agile, that is execution oriented, where you roll up your sleeves and engage in the work of the day. You will not be successful with us if you don't do that. That's a challenge because a lot of the big pharma companies, you do get to sit in your office and give instruction all day. And if you do that at Allergan and I would say at Edwards, that's probably approaching your last day of work. And so we have to work that through. Where we need to improve on is that next step, which is turning work into career, right? And that is our, in fact, big effort now, bless you. And for us, creating that value proposition is going from job to career. So we grow about 10% a year, our employee population by about 10% a year, but unfortunately our turnover is about the same number, okay? And a lot of that is because we're not offering career. And so the focus for us now is on offering career. We've used as a tagline for the business for some time, our pursuit, life's potential. So for our employee base, it's our pursuit, your potential. And so we're developing those frameworks now to turn it into a value proposition.
And I was really interested in the psychological part about individuals and how do generations actually differ. So I started doing this work and found there hadn't been a whole lot done on it. So what I really wanted to find was psychological data on how actual people differ among generations. So the important thing in that is it's really difficult to draw any conclusions about generational differences if you have a sample from just one time, because then you can't tell what's age and what's generation. So what you want ideally is data that goes back in time. So that's what I'm going to show you today primarily, is data that can separate the effects of age and generation, because it looks at, for example, people when they're 18 years old, but going back in time to say the 60s and 70s, that's when the baby boomers were that age. So this is not stereotypes per se, because it is based on data. However, like most scientific studies and most surveys, it is based on averages. Of course, there's going to be exceptions. So, and the other caveat is, yes, there are generational similarities, and we have a lot of the same challenges that everybody faces, but it's the differences that cause the challenges in the workplace and at home and every place else. Now, by this time, 85, this was a fairly accepted point of view, that you wanted to love yourself, self-esteem was important, all of those things. But what's remarkable is not that long before this, 20 years before that, even especially 30 years before that, say in 1955, this would have been considered very odd to say that loving yourself is important, much less that it was the greatest love. Back then, the greatest love would have been for children, like my mom said, or for God, or for country. That it'd be for yourself would be just kind of strange and selfish sounding and weird. Nobody would really even think about that. And if you got to somebody on the street in 1955 and said, do you have high self-esteem? They probably would have said, do I have high what? They would have had really no idea what you were talking about. But by 85, everybody knew that word. They knew they were supposed to have it. But the other thing is, in 1955, if you talked about loving yourself, they probably would have thought you were talking about something else. So this idea of self-esteem, some of you took a little longer to get that. We got there eventually.
They're not quite as fast over there. Well, you know.
So this idea of self-esteem being so important has led to a number of very interesting cultural trends, such as everybody gets a trophy. very, very common now in children's sports leagues, and has been since the 90s, unheard of a generation or two ago, that if you show up, you get a trophy. And you sit on the bench, you get a trophy. You suck, you still get the trophy. My 10-year-old nephew has one of these, pretty big trophy, about like this big, and it says excellence in participation. What does that even mean? I'm good at showing up? I don't know.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So another thing some of the sports leagues do is everybody's trophy is the same size, no matter who wins or loses, and that resembles real life oh so much. Or they don't keep score at all, so there's no winners and no losers. The Gen Y label is usually written as a letter, the one letter Y, capital Y, but some people say it should be written this way, WHY question mark. And I've noticed this in my students as well. You really have to put things in context. You've got to explain why it matters. Now, it's not as much in the baby boomer sense of the meeting and the larger purpose. It's, well, what do you do here? And why is it important? Because that means, why am I going to be important? How can I have the personal impact? And then, of course, the idea of moving up and being the project lead. What are the opportunities for me here? Because I don't want to be entry level. I want to move up. So if you're going to bring me as entry level, at least tell me what things I can think about for in the future. What is my career path? What are the opportunities if I really do well? Another thing is, because of that difference in work-life balance, and was the largest generational difference that we found in that study, that flexibility and time off and so on is going to be something that will often be very important to this group.